Hey, what's up you guys, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you are all doing well. I just wanted to make a small video today to test out my brand new camera. I got a camera yesterday, so I'm no longer using my phone for recording these videos, which is a huge step forward in my opinion. So I should have better video quality now. I am, however, still working on getting lighting and a new microphone, so I may not have the best sound quality and my lighting might not be the best, but at least my video quality is better and I'm slowly but surely building up my equipment repertoire. So we'll go from here. Anyway, I wanted to discuss just briefly a topic that I think is very relevant to the fact that I'm doing this YouTube channel, but also something that I think would be beneficial to many people who may want to watch this and get something out of it. And that topic is setting personal goals. I think that's so important. We all have things we want to achieve. We all have certain desires and aspirations for ourselves and for our lives. And I think setting goals is something that everybody does to some degree, but I think we tend to make a lot of mistakes and oversights when we set these goals that could be avoided if we just thought about things in a different way. I think the first and biggest mistake that we tend to make when setting personal goals is keeping sort of a passive, I guess the word I'm looking for is a mindset of it happening eventually, but not necessarily anytime soon. You know, we set these mindsets of, oh, well, I'll buy a house one day. Or, oh, I'll get a raise at work eventually. Or, you know, these vague, nondescript timelines that we set in our head. And subconsciously, that is going to mess with the way we perceive our goals. Because if we're constantly pounding into our own heads the idea that this will happen eventually, well, you know, 3 years later, you say, oh, well, I'll buy a house one day. Well, 3 years later, you're still saying, oh, well, I'll buy a house one day. We set this habit of just continually leaving it as something that will happen eventually, as though the world's just going to drop it into our laps. And I think that's the biggest mistake we make when setting personal goals. So instead, what we should do is give ourselves a working timeline. Now, whether or not we meet this deadline that we set for ourselves is obviously up for debate. It's not something we can predict. However, setting a timeline for ourselves gives us a sense of urgency and a sense of importance and like, hey, this is really happening. This is really something that I'm working on and something that I'm going to achieve by this time if all goes as planned. As opposed to just kind of putting it on the back burner and letting it take its course. Instead, we're being active instead of passive about when our goal is reached. So instead of saying I'll buy a house one day, say I'm gonna buy a house in 2 years. Instead of saying I'll get a raise at work eventually, say I'm going to get a raise at work in 3 months. Or in the case of me running this YouTube channel, my goal is to get 100 subscribers and get monetized and be able to actually make some money off of doing my YouTube channel. That's a little personal goal that I've set. Not that it's necessary, not that I'm placing so much importance on it that I'm gonna forget to have fun and just enjoy doing these videos, because that's not the case. It's just, that's something I'd like to achieve if I can. And so I've set a little bit of a timeline for myself that I'd like to reach 100 subscribers by the end of this year. And that's a pretty lofty timeline. It's not super hard to achieve, assuming that I work adamantly toward it and I share it and you all share my my videos and help me promote myself, which please, please, please do. It helps me so much. And these kinds of timelines just make it so much more real. Because if we just say it'll happen eventually, it feels like a dream. It feels like something that we're hoping for, but not really working for, if that makes sense. Whereas when we set a timeline, it feels like, oh, if I want this to happen by this time, I actually need to step forward and put forth the effort to make this come true. Now, the second mistake we make when setting personal goals kind of goes hand in hand with that first one, especially the last thing I said about that first one. We tend to not put forth any work toward our goals. We set a goal and we think, oh, it's just gonna happen. The universe is just gonna make it happen. One day this will occur and it's just gonna fall into place. So you can't just set this personal timeline and then sit back and do nothing and say, okay, well, in 3 years, I guess I'll have a house if I just keep repeating the same routine and doing the same thing, working the same minimum wage job. You can't expect things to just fall into place. Even if you've set a timeline for yourself, you can't be passive about the actual effort it takes to make those goals happen. Our goals don't just fall into place. They never will. We actually have to put forth some effort and do the work ourselves. So when you've set your timeline and you've decided, okay, I'm going to do such and such in 3 years, figure out what steps it's going to take to make that happen. Say you want to buy a house in 3 years. What's it going to take to do that? Does your job pay well enough that you can save up money for a down payment and afford the house payment when you decide to go through with buying the house? If not, you need to get a higher paying job or work toward a raise at your current job. Do you have all the paperwork filled out? Do you know where you want to live when you buy your house? If not, you need to figure that information out. You need to get the ball rolling and get things started. Things like that. We need to step by step plan out, if I want this to happen by this time, it's going to take these steps, and we need to time our work on those steps progressively to get things done in a timely manner. Because if we just sit back and hope it's going to happen soon, it's never going to happen. We have to work for our goals. That is the biggest part of it. And that's why I have started making videos more regularly. That's why I'm actually going back to school soon. I'm working toward personal goals, and I'm making the steps necessary to achieve those goals, and I hope you all can do the same. I think another mistake we make when we set personal goals, probably the last one I'm going to discuss, is we get discouraged. We allow ourselves to get torn up about mistakes or setbacks or obstacles that we face. And while it's okay to be disappointed if something comes up and gets in the way of what you're trying to do, say with the house example, if you're struggling to find a job that pays better and you know your current job doesn't pay well enough to get you by and get you a house, that can be frustrating. And yeah, we're allowed to be disappointed about that. There's nothing wrong with being disappointed or frustrated when things aren't exactly going the way you want or need them to achieve your goals. However, we shouldn't let anything discourage us. We shouldn't give up on our goals just because something is getting in the way. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it is the biggest obstacle you've ever faced with anything in life. Tackle it. Make it go away. Tear down that obstacle. When a wall appears in front of you, burst through it. And it may take time. It may take a lot of effort and a lot of work, but just keep pushing forward, because if your goal is truly important to you and you want to achieve it, you're going to have to work hard for it. And when you face an obstacle, you can't let it tear you down and make you go, oh man, I just don't even know if I want to do this. It's so hard. I'm not achieving what I want, and there's so much getting in my way, so I'm just going to give up. Don't let that happen. Don't give up on your goals just because something is stepping in your way. Get rid of that something. Work through it. Work past it until you achieve your goals. And you will, eventually. There's nothing we can't achieve. We are the smartest species on the planet. We can achieve whatever we set our minds to, as long as we stay adamant and continue pushing forward despite any opposition. So if you face problems and it sets you back, okay, so you're set back a little bit. If you face problems and it makes it so you have to work harder, okay, you have to work a little harder. But if your goal is that important to you, you will make the effort to get it done no matter what obstacle you face. I think that will conclude my discussion of this topic for today. I hope it was a little bit motivating for some of you and maybe gives you some ideas of ways to change your thinking in order to achieve the things that you desire. I don't know how many of you have maybe heard of the law of attraction, but it really does work to some extent. I mean, take it with a grain of salt. But if you put your mind to something and you say, I'm going to have this by this time, and you really focus on the feeling of having it and knowing that you're going to achieve that and that you're going to push forward until it becomes a reality. If you just focus all of your intent on achieving what you want, no matter what obstacles you face, it'll come to you. You'll get it eventually. So work hard, achieve all of your goals. I hope you all have a wonderful week. I will be back with a new YouTube video coming, probably next week sometime. I may have more to come before then, if I think of something that I want to discuss or something that I want to do, but that's what's in the works right now. So I will see you all in the next video. I love you, and have a great one.